is our trending topic today is actually kind of a fascinating story because, we've been talking here about the role of the algorithms and the bias that algorithms have in terms of the culture that it creates on social media. But what if you could choose your own algorithm, right? Right now, you can't. Right now, the only way you can choose your own algorithm is by choosing a different social media platform, right? If you don't like Twitch's algorithm, you can go to TikTok. Because as we've discussed in past episodes, TikTok does legitimately have a completely different algorithm than the other major platforms. But what if you as a user could choose your own algorithm? What if, just like there's an app store, you could go to a kind of algorithm store and choose a different logic, choose a different means by which the content on that site is sorted. The channels that are promoted to you, the content that ends up being filtered in a news feed. This is the idea that rather than have a centralized algorithm, what if you could have a decentralized algorithm? Now, this is a concept that's been floating around in the kind of theoretical or abstract, but it turns out that Twitter is actually working on this seriously. That Jack Dorsey, the founder and current CEO of Twitter, he's talked a lot about his desire for a decentralized social media network. Now, their agenda in doing so is that Twitter is a kind of underdog compared to Facebook and Google and even Twitch, if you reflect that Twitch is owned by Amazon. And because Twitter remains a kind of underdog or remains a kind of, a lagger when it comes to the social media race, they're leveraging decentralization as a way to compete or as a way to differentiate themselves from other social media platforms. And quite recently, Dorsey's announced their intentions to create a kind of app store for social media algorithms where you get to pick the social media algorithms that work for you. So this, on the one hand, perhaps acknowledges that all algorithms are biased, but it allows you to pick your bias. And maybe if you have enough programming skills to even create your own algorithm and put it in the Twitter App Store as a way to build the better mousetrap, or in this case, build the better algorithm. Now, I want to get to the kind of substance of this. Twitter could both create its own ranking algorithms for people to choose from and offer a marketplace where people select different options. That is something that not only we can host, but we can participate in, Dorsey said. Giving people more choice would not only help out business, but drive more people into participating in social media in the first place. Dorsey also sees decentralization as a way to address some of the problems around Section 230, the law that gives platforms protection from user content. The law has recently been a popular target for some legislators, and a decentralized network might offer Twitter a way to avoid issues if stricter rules were to be put in place, whether those rules require more moderation or for Twitter to apply a more neutral approach to what content is surfaced. Twitter has slowly been working on developing a decentralized social network for more than a year. Dorsey announced the project named Blue Sky in December of 2019, but the company is just now trying to hire a project manager. So things are clearly a ways off. TechCrunch published a deep dive last month on where the project is headed, and it described Blue Sky as firmly in the research phase. But nonetheless, the fact that they are entertaining a decentralized model where you get to choose your own algorithm and you get to decide the logic by which the social media platform is governed, I think that's a pretty fantastic development. And I think that's one, as fellow cyberpunks, we should be preparing for. Because I think the opportunity here is not just as users to be able to create these algorithms to change our own perception, but in particular as developers, to create our own algorithms, to beat these social media platforms at their own game, because we've got critical distance, we've got a different perspective. You know, Grandpa Max comments, yes, being able to choose or highlight posters and post types would be game changing, but it could also increase the problem of echo chambers, which leads back to more online radicalization. Absolutely, Grandpa Max. That's a fantastic point. And it illustrates the kind of double-edged sword that, on the one hand, if we had like a million algorithms bloom, if there were all sorts of innovation and disruption in terms of how these pools of information, because that's another way to look at a social media platform, is just an ocean of data. And if we could start putting in our own code to start sorting and understanding that data, that's incredibly powerful. But you're right to point out that extremists, political parties, demagogues, corporations, they're all going to be playing the same game. And they're all going to be using this to create, I would say, not even filter bubbles or echo chambers. Heck, they're going to create cults. They're going to create religions. I mean, they're going to double down and take the filter bubble or echo chamber, which is sort of an insular community on the surface, and instead they're going to take it to the depths. And they're going to create the kind of insular communities like cults, like religions, like fanatical movements that really not only leverage the power of an algorithm, but also pose a real threat to society. So perhaps it illustrates the need for transparency. Perhaps it anticipates a new algorithmic war in which we'll have competing algorithms going against each other to try to out the cults and out the fanatical groups who are using these algorithms to sort of create, you know, these communities. I mean, this is why we call our show Cyberpunk Now, because this stuff is pretty surreal. And you can imagine real quick how this stuff is just going to take us into the world that cyberpunk fiction prophesized, but we are now starting to see come true. So that's why I think today's trending topic of choose your own algorithm is something we're going to keep an eye on. And props to Twitter, props to Jack Dorsey for anticipating the need for decentralized social media. I mean, as Grandpa Max points out, with great potential comes great peril. Like, you know, there's certainly a lot of new risks that will be raised as a result of decentralized social media. But at the same time, I think it's the kind of experiment that the earlier we encounter it, right? The fail early, fail often, I think the better, because blockchain and Bitcoin are going to make decentralized social media happen regardless. And I think that's why the earlier we have more public, more responsible experimentation, perhaps the better off all of us will